Invincible, Introducing Adam Eve is a standalone special episode released just prior to the beginning of Season 2. It does what it says on the tin and chronicles the origins of Adam Eve. The Lizard League is attacking some facility, and here we get to see the childish King Lizard being trained by his mother Queen Lizard. Immortal smashes through a wall to take out one of their henchmen. What was his plan? Just fly randomly through walls until he hits someone? Or can he see through walls? If so, why not aim for the Queen? Cut off the serpent's head. War Woman does her best Bear Jew impression from Inglourious Basterds, dragging her mace on the ground. Omni-Man has his new suit on, which Immortal mocks. Omni-Man says that the fashion is now wearing big letters on their chests. I never picked up that Immortal had an eye on his chest too. Some nice back history of the Guardians of the Globe, and a pretty cool fight scene. Eve's mother was in some kind of experimental trial to create super soldiers. She was being rushed to hospital by Professor Brandywine. He's called by his boss who wants him to bring her back, but he refuses. For some reason, he throws his phone out the window, even though they already know where he's going. So his mum dies giving birth, so they swap her out for her real parents. They had a dead baby, so they told them it was a mistake, and their baby is back to being alive. Hopefully she's the right blood type, or Eve's mum is going to have some explaining to do. There's a lot of static images or stationary background characters in this episode. I guess they had to save some money on this one. There's a weird scene where toddler Eve is at a play party and she's staring at the wooden floor. But her mum acts as if she's doing something weird and hurries her away. What was all that about? Kid Eve has some kind of preoccupation with atomic structures, which is kind of weird. I can understand if she has the power to move or modify atoms, but where does she learn the notation for it? Their house front door opens outward. Weird. Eve's explaining why mercury is a liquid at room temperature. If she just said that the atoms don't like to be friends or something childish, it would make sense. But she's talking about valent subshells and things like that. Even her dad says she's not been reading textbooks. She can hardly read at all. Her mum's trying to convince her dad that she's smart enough to go to a school for gifted students, which she attempts to accomplish by telling him the neighbour caught her staring at his tree for an hour. I wouldn't call that gifted behaviour. There's another set of experiments who can barely hold themselves together. Eve's mum parks the car on the street and just walks inside without getting a kid out while a bus is across the road. How strange. But she makes friends with the little girl across the street, Val, so it's all in service of the plot. Eve wants to do something that matters. That's puntastic. Eve's powers come in and of course she's amazing at them immediately. She has one issue with the book turning into glass accidentally, but she immediately changed it back. And she turned a horrible sandwich into a delicious burger. First time, every time. Because she's amazing. This episode really loves the mopey chick with an acoustic guitar vibe. She gets a terrible dress from her auntie for Christmas, but she turns it into a top and jeans. Why not keep the dress and turn thin air into a top and jeans? You know, like you just said you could? Okay, so it seems like at this point she can only turn complex things into complex things and create simple objects out of thin air. At least we finally get an upbeat song. Couple of weird extra long still shots of these dogs the crooks are dog napping. Honestly, I thought the black crook was going to be the kid from earlier that was babysitting Samantha. So Dr. Brandywine just happens to appear when she's flown halfway across the city. Okay, she's creeped out by him again, but she agrees to go for a walk through the forest. I guess she does have superpowers. She could turn his brain into soup. Wait. So she can't change people or animals. That's important to remember. So Brandywine thinks they're onto her and tells her to go and not use her powers. So what does she do immediately? Yep, uses her powers. She tries to stop Kill Cannon from robbing a jeweler's and she's getting cocky now. Luckily, Kill Cannon is just as cocky and quips instead of blowing her head off. Dr. Brandywine finds her and tells her off and explains that her mother was a bum who they used to breed super soldiers. They don't know her dad. Could be anyone. Wonder if that will come back later. But the government send out phases 2 through 4 to try to flush her out. Now, believe me, I was looking for instances of her using her powers on people, but she seems to have limited it to objects that they had on them. So she can make a hammer and hit someone with it, but she can't turn their muscles into jelly. I thought for a second there that she'd healed her wound, but she just grew her dress over it. This was a pretty cool fight scene with a lot of creative attacks. Elements of the environment being used as weapons and shields. Eve comes across as a bit of a clone of the Green Lantern. She seems to be on the back foot a lot, which requires her to come up with creative uses for her powers. The motives of the extra phases are a bit puzzling. You could put it down to envy, but I don't know why they wouldn't turn their anger towards their creators. What does killing Adam Eve accomplish? They could have promised them extra funding for further research if they prove themselves in the field. Just as Eve's on her last legs, Brandywine comes and saves the day by ramming the extra phases with a car. Talk about great timing. So the final phase, phase 2, has her right where he wants her, and then he gets Thanos snapped out of existence. But as he's dying, he seems to be much more pleasant. Weird. So the government turn up and they take them back to the lab, and they have Eve's mother as a vegetable purely for breeding purposes. That's pretty messed up. In the ensuing melee, Mum gets shot and dies. This makes Eve flip out. Seems like the restraints are no longer in place, as she can see the atoms inside of them. She even threatens to turn them into different people. But she just settles with erasing their memories. We get another horrible, mopey female voice with piano. Oh god, make it stop. It's horrible. Weird post-credits scene with Mark dressing up as Duct Tape Man. Debbie takes him to run a bath and tells Omni-Man to finish cooking dinner. We see Omni-Man trying to suppress his rage, and his conflicting feelings drive him to tears. See, he was always torn. I really liked this episode. This was an 8 for me. Sure, there were some weird things going on and a contradiction or two, but they were mostly inconsequential. I like origin stories as long as they're not ones we already know. I don't need another Batman origin story, but Atom Eve, I'll take that. I could stand to see the rest of the Guardians of the Globe. The fight scenes in this episode were really well done, very dynamic and with high stakes. The interpersonal drama felt well deserved, as it was a story about how Atom Eve's family functions. I would have liked to have seen how they handle Eve knowing they're not her parents a bit more. It kinda just gets brushed over. Even if Eve always felt something was off, her parents have no idea. There were a couple of issues with static shots being held too long, which really drew my attention to the fact that I was watching a cartoon. They did this at the start of Invincible too. I remember thinking the animation was bad until the post-credits battle. Oh, and I can't ignore the terrible music. Surely it's not just a taste thing, as I felt that the music was so off-key, and it almost felt like the same artist. I hope they mix it up a bit. I guess they have to use who they can afford. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, please consider subscribing. I release reviews occasionally when time allows, and a thumbs up would be a big motivator for further reviews. If you didn't like it, feel free to leave a thumbs down and let me know how I can improve in the comments below. Anyway, I'm Mixie, thanks for your time, and have a good one.